I saw that you attended a few CEO camps, Mark, and I'll probably never attend one, but just asking you, what goes on at those things? Are you able to...
You ready?
Yeah, no, I'm ready.
Timeout. Tyler, who are we taking a timeout with today?
Well, thank you, Kevin. Well, it's time to put the children to bed, y'all, and go hunting for some dinner with Mark Donohue, founder of LifeGuides. And Mark, thanks for coming on our show. You're the first person outside of Rochester to be on here. As we can tell, you have a little suntan. And first question out of the gate, Mark, is what's in Mark Donohue's golf bag? What kind of sticks are you swinging nowadays?
Yeah, I've got Clevelander and TaylorMade, but I haven't played golf actually in 3 years, even though I live in Florida. That's the life of an entrepreneur. I did play college varsity golf though, and a good game. There are other priorities right now.
So a guy that lives in Florida, if you had to leave tomorrow, drop everything, where are you buying a plane ticket to? What's your favorite vacation spot?
It's all about where the people are and who you're hanging out with. So depends on who you're traveling with. I'm traveling the right people. Almost any place is fun, but mostly I like hanging out up in Napa. I'm involved with O'Brien Estate Winery up there. So now I have a lot of winemaker and chef friends. So that's always a good gig, to say the least.
Yes, I would say so. My brother-in-law and you would be best friends because he was seriously contemplating, I think, that $10,000 a month to go move out to Napa to work at one of the wineries. Him and his wife have gone there, I think, 4 times in the last 2 years. He's obsessed with Napa.
It's a great quality of life if that's what your passion is.
Yes.
I've gone through the living on a winery and the estate kind of life for a few years, and as I was building a venture capital fund in the Bay Area and kind of commuting to San Francisco back when the commute was only 45 minutes from Napa, the old days. But yeah, I mean, that's great, but it's nice to be around amazing people and living in places like San Francisco or Miami or New York, Boston, all places I call home.
Yeah, Mark, I was scrolling through your resume today on LinkedIn, and I'm still scrolling. What impresses a guy like Mark Donohue nowadays? Like, I'm serious. I was going through so many things you've been in. Today, on 2021, what impresses Mark Donohue in a person? How about that? What is it? What does something that your employees do that impress you?
Well, a person impressing me versus an employee might be slightly different lenses, because the employee might have a certain outcome related to LifeGuides. But generally, what captures my attention is when somebody is fully living their life purpose and is aligned with spirit or whatever they believe in. But let's say the overall positive direction of humanity, and is furthering something that's just basic goodness in the world. And I tend to be very attracted to people who approach everything from an entrepreneurial mindset, because entrepreneurship's about managing change to create desired outcomes. And certainly there are a lot of dimensions of the system we're living in today that need to change so we can have a more sustainable, vibrant, happy, healthy planet for everyone.
Yeah. I'll get on that soapbox with you, Mark. I fully believe a lot of everything that you just mentioned there. All right, so you're in Napa. One more question to really learn a little bit more about Mark and who you are. You're in Napa, first night, one of your CEO retreats, karaoke. What song do you pick and why?
Yeah, well, I'm not a singer, but I do play percussions and music and hang out with a lot of musicians. Probably an Eric Clapton song, Probably Changed the World.
Ooh, yep. Okay, moving on, Mark. So I got to ask, conscious capitalism, it was all throughout, it pretty much follows you through your entire career. It's obviously been something of importance. what do businesses really have to learn about conscious capitalism, and what advice would you share with a CEO that might think differently?
Well, I mean, broadly, conscious capitalism is a subset of what we created, or people before me created in the space, really emerging out of the late 70s, which came out of the whole 60s kind of revolution of consciousness. Then we came into the late 70s. We had a lot of issues that came up in the investment world, where early pioneers like Wayne Sylvia at Calvert Investments were addressing things like apartheid and saying, don't invest in South Africa. And that led to what that was called social responsible investing. That led to, in the mid 80s, the founding of Social Venture Network, which was the first leading organization of what you might call conscious capitalists today. That was founded in '88 by Josh Nealman and also Wayne Sylvie. And that organization was kind of birthing the whole social responsible business world, this term we used back then. And back then we had, the double bottom line, which became the triple bottom line, which became the quadruple bottom line. So today we talk about the 4 Ps: people, profit, planet, and purpose. So, that whole evolution led to the formation of other organizations like Business for Social Responsibility. I was there at the founding of that in '96, which Social Venture Network fostered, and other movements ultimately, like Social Capital, the biggest social responsible investment forum in the world, SoCap, based out of San Francisco for the last 20 years. And so you had all of these aspects of multiple bottom lines, like the environment is one of your stakeholders, one of your investors. That whole concept of planet and people, profit, planet, purpose means that your largest investor in any company in the world is the environment. You foundationally are getting more investment from that in clean air, clean water, sunlight to operate a business in than any government or state could ever provide. So when looked at from a stakeholder partner perspective, things like that, of an integrated perspective of, we're all in this together. We need to respect the whole ecosystem that we're operating within. And that includes, I think, where the term conscious capitalism came from, is conscious is about being aware of all the multi-stakeholder approach. And that whole piece really started to birth the multi-stakeholder approach in the late 90s. We had the whole evolution of ESG coming out of that period, environment, social governance, which you hear about, that led to corporate social responsibility, led to offices and organizations that were focused on things like the environment or the health of the people in new ways. So the term conscious capitalism is really seeing that whole perspective, and that was invented by Raj Sisodia and John Mackey. Raj is a professor at Babson College, my alma mater, and that's really where I helped build out. Actually, in '94, I founded and funded the first large gathering on social responsible business at a college university in the world of Babson. Raj joined our team about 9 years ago, and kind of built upon all these movements we were working on in the late 80s and on with John Mackey, who founded Whole Foods. And they came up with a really innovative term, conscious capitalism. But there are other innovative terms like, impact entrepreneurship or impact enterprise, and other, social capital. In the area of environmental investments, my business partners, Keith Rabb and Nick Parker, and I created the Clean Tech Group and renamed environmental investing in 2002 Clean Tech. That ended up moving well over $1 trillion of new capital over the last 20 years, because we rebranded the entire environmental capital network and our investment space, and created the largest conferences and data provider in the world for then environmental investors. So, rebranding, re-messaging, making it more inviting, making it more sexy, making it more cool. Conscious capitalism has done a great job with that, and we're very active in that organization, LifeGuides. And there are other, kind of suns and stars in the sky of the whole constellation of how we use business as a force for good.
Oh my God. Well, if anybody just caught that, Mark just dropped the mic on his side because wow, that was wow. That
I was thinking we bit off more than we could chew with Mark Donohue here.
I think so.
Whoa.
Your point about treating business as an ecosystem, that was pretty mind blowing right there. I mean, an understanding of that you're a small part in the true ecosystem of the planet at the end of the day. I have to ask this question then, understanding your foundation and how you see in business, how do you see culture and how have you been able to build the culture there at LifeGuides have obviously made you successful very quickly with the efforts of hitting 1 billion people in 15 years?
Well, yeah, we do have a goal of possibly impacting directly and indirectly 1 billion people's lives within 15 years as we scale with enterprises, both for-profit and nonprofit enterprises, as our partners with our network, our community called LifeGuides to support humans, employee families in lifelong learning and personal growth opportunities and in navigating a whole range of life challenges, which so often one wants to have human support, experience human support with, but it's hard to find. So for employers, we make that turnkey for their employees. So, at that level, yeah, we're very much a mission-driven enterprise. And then within the concept of any enterprise, mission-driven or not, there's this aspect of culture. And culture usually is a combination of values and practices and how you walk your talk and giving the whole community or tribe voice and co-creating an outcome that is a fertile field to grow your enterprise in. So culture is foundational as capital to building enterprises. So without effective and appropriate culture, you can't really grow a sustainable enterprise, an enterprise that will thrive and live. So yeah, culture at LifeGuides is foundational. We put a lot of energy into it. We've had some ups and downs on that and learnings over the last several years, which has been really cool. That's been a great personal learning process for me. I won't say that I'm a culture creation genius, but I have people in the company I've founded who are genius at it. And
what have you learned?
Well, I think that there's been a lot learned along the way. One of the things is sometimes slowing down will speed things up. So, culture is a very human dynamic. So sometimes when you slow things down, it creates more space for people to breathe in a business because businesses want to move so quickly, particularly high growth tech, rapid companies like a LifeGuides or the whole Silicon Valley ecosystem. So slowing it down in certain ways can be very good so that the humans can catch up with, the evolution of the enterprise. That doesn't mean you restrain your business, but it might mean you have the business meet people in their speed and pace. I tend to move very quickly and oftentimes will, jump very quickly. My mind just processes complexity quickly, digests it. So, that, for example, can make people feel less heard because, it feels other people need more time to process and then they don't feel like they have a voice. So that'd be an example about a personal learning to meet people in their own pace and where they are. But we could go through 20 other core lessons like that would be helpful if we only had another few hours.
Couple hours. I got all the time in the world for you, Mark.
Yeah,
so.
you packed the dinner.
Yeah.
Culture is where it's at. And, fortunately, businesses are getting that. LifeGuides is a solution that really enhances the culture of caring and is really designed as a solution for companies that want to be an innovator and leader in employee caring and do that in a really humanistic way. So, for me, getting that right has been more important than I imagined, particularly LifeGuides, where we're enhancing that dimension for other companies. So we have to walk our talk at a deeper level. I will say that when you are a mission-driven enterprise with the type of values and vision that LifeGuides has, that because we're so aspirational, that people can set the bar higher for us than sometimes is even realistic. Like, for example, employee expectation of, let's say, perfection within LifeGuides. So it's important that we, as leaders of mission-driven enterprise, those who would self-identify that way, realize that. And, ask people to just be gentle and realistic with us as leaders, because, while we want to continually innovate and do better, let's not make perfection the enemy of good, good enough the enemy of perfection. So, we just have to be careful with that.
Right. And you mentioned the word slow down a few times there, and I caught that. And Mark, I saw that you went to the Zen Center of Santa Fe. Whatever you learned there, how do you translate and use that into the business world? If we're all go, go, go all the time and trying to kind of detach from any materialistic item for, say, how do you translate it into the business world?
Well, I just first of all, I'm in a year-long training on socially engaged Buddhism with Roshi Joan Halifax and Gozan Matt Pilevsky, and around 40 of the other leading teachers in the Buddhist world. And so we have 300 people in the training, and Roshi Joan Halifax is one of the people I respect most on the planet, really amazing person of living in loving kindness, and really teaching that to the world. And she has a particular specialty in end-of-life care, but really is in service. Yet, beyond my 30 years of Buddhist practice, I have 30 years of Hindu practice. I have, 50 plus years of Christian practice. I have, over 2 decades of being very much in the
How
teaching.
old are you? I'm just kidding. Oh my God. So do you see how religion can be mixed, like just a greater purpose? Like you mentioned this, the one of the men that you respect most in the world. What makes him stick out and be so different?
Well, that's her, Roshi Joan Halifax. But religion is foundational. So these are the guidelines for the majority of the human species for how to live a good life. They define a lot of the story of what we consider shame. They define a lot of the story of what we consider being heroic. So, one just needs to read the Old Testament, which is obviously shared with Judaism and Christianity, and these are, heroic stories. Moses is a heroic story. So, so much of our cultural identity, speaking of culture early, and our values, what we consider social responsible business or conscious capitalism, is derived from the foundations of religion. So the most simple way over the last decades that I've defined social responsible business, conscious capitalism, whatever you want to call that whole area, business of force for good, is I say it's really just living by the golden rule. Now the golden rule goes across many different religions. So in Christianity, it's as you sow, so shall you reap. In Buddhism, it's the law of karma. We can go through all the major religions. All the nonviolent religions have clearly this precept, this dimension at their core. So when you think about as you treat others, you'll receive back. As you treat nature, so shall you receive back. As you treat God, so shall you receive back. As you treat yourself as a reflection of God's Spirit, so shall you receive back. If you apply that to business, then you've got business is a force for good, and it changes the entirety of eternity.
It's funny because I literally was just saying that to him the other day. I said, this is what I live by, and it served me well thus far. Wow, Mark, giving us a lot to chew right there. So I'm almost speechless in a way. So I have to ask, what is coactive coaching? Because I also saw you got a certification in that. What is that, and how do you apply that practice?
Well, that's from an organization called CTI that's based in San Rafael, California. They are the largest coaching certification organization in the English world. I just happens to be a certification that I took, 8 or 9 years ago. And, coactive coaching tends to be focused on perspectives, on, what way you're looking at things. Sort of like the old story of, you touch an elephant's tail, and what is it? You might think it's a snake. You grab an elephant's foot. What do you think it is? Might think it's a tree. So, a lot of life is stuck in those perspectives, and also those assumptions. Ruiz's book, The Four Assumptions, I believe it's called. That's not quite the title of it, but the basic core thing there was, don't make assumptions about people. And proactive coaching has this whole dimension of being very aware of what angle, what perspective, what values you're bringing to your experience, because that completely changes your outcome.
Yeah, intention drives attention. That's for my friend Dr. Nick Molinaro.
I saw that you attended a few CEO camps, Mark, and I'll probably never attend one, but just asking you, what goes on at those things?
Yeah, well, I can assure you I'm usually able to get a word in anywhere. So
he was trying to be too polite with that question.
yeah. I'm a 6'4" tall Irishman. So
you can wiggle your way in there.
Yeah, and fortunate to have been born, white and in America, with all that perceived authority based on the way we, racially profile people. So, I have instant built-in authority a lot in my life and in my birth. And so, those types of gatherings, fortunately, are changing and evolving, getting more diverse and more and more inclusive. I've been parts of many leadership groups for the last 30 years, particularly in recent times, Singularity University, which is about exponential technology. Certainly studying with Dr. Peter Diamandis, the founder of the X Prize and founder of Singularity University. Peter's amazing with his books, Bold and Abundance, and I'm in his kind of private CEO network for the last 6 years, mentoring called Abundance 360. I think certain organizations like Summit are really amazing. Summit series, if you want to be around what they call a festival of ideas, it's a larger gathering, not quite as small and intimate oftentimes, but some of the gatherings are. But if you really want to be around amazing doer thinkers, leaders, obviously Babson College, where I'm an alum and was professor of entrepreneurship, was on the board of overseers for 9 years. That's another amazing, leadership community, CEO community. So Social Venture Network, which I mentioned earlier, obviously, I was chair of the membership committee there in '99 and been very involved over the last now 29 years, which is amazing. So, these are some of my favorite organizations, and also Conscious Capitalism, which we talked earlier about. Amazing organization. You can read the book. Everybody has to find their own tribes. I mean, I'm into exponential technology, so the evolution of technology and how that's rapidly, exponentiating 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 to 32. This is not a linear progression anymore. I'm very much into the environmental communities and impact. I chair and founded the Sustainability and Energy Forum at Babson College. It's been going on for over 15 years. And obviously clean tech group. So, we try and bring together and convene leaders in sustainable enterprise, sustainable business, environmentally sensitive impact, like Paul Pullman, the past chairman and CEO of Unilever, we just had at Babson at my annual event, who's an amazing example of leadership in that realm. So for me, people have to define, what turns them on. There's, some people want to be Mother Teresa and on the front lines in that way, rolling up their sleeves and being in the service and suffering. Others are elevating in different ways by, say, bringing capital to great ideas or being great manager leaders. And everybody has to figure out what feeds them. I made a decision a long time ago in the late 80s as I was graduating college that even though I came from a lower middle class family and didn't have much advantage, certainly surprised I even got through Babson financially, but fortunately they gave me a full scholarship. I think it's the first time they had ever done that.
Best decision they ever made, maybe potentially the best decision.
They've done very well on that investment. So yeah.
I think that paid off a lot.
They did agree with that. But
we might hit you up for more money after this, Mark.
Yeah, just wait till the show is put on. I'm sure the phone will ring. Yeah. Actually, I don't think they've ever actually asked me for a check. Actually, so, I was so involved in alumni affairs and development for the last 30 years that I just you just give and you do what you're doing, and I don't think I've ever actually been asked by Babson for anything financially ever in 30 years. Or more than that. So you just want to give to something that's as good as that and show up for the game, give to the next generation. But yeah, so there are these communities. For me, I made the decision early on that I was okay for me to want to really enjoy life, live in abundance, and have it all. And I don't need to be a monk living in a cave or an ascetic. And I was going to focus on doing exponential goodness on the planet, but I've decided to have a lot of pleasure related to that, and I feel great about that.
Yeah, as you should. I mean, you're doing it in a totally different way, and everybody has their way to make an impact or their mark on this world or anybody's even day. You're making my day. This is probably a day that I don't think I'll forget because of just everything that you're giving us. One of the things that I wanted to always ask a man of and I think you alluded to one of the mentors in your life, but I've always been a person that's flourished under mentorship. Who is a mentor to a person like you, Mark?
Well, I've had 5 amazing mentors in my life that have significantly defined my life. Now that would be excluding anyone in my family, like my sister Elena, who's my closest friend and who's mentored me a lot in my personal growth and spiritual growth and understanding of kind of a holistic approach toward human health, an integrative health model. Certainly Bill Cruikshank, who at Babson, I believe most people would agree was the most loved person in the history of Babson. He ended up being like a second father to me, and mentored me. Was actually my business partner for about 10 years after I graduated from school, and we created a very close relationship. They renamed the Lifetime Achievement Award at Babson after him perpetually because he had gotten it so many times. Then there's people like Barbara Marks Hubbard, who I co-edited her seminal book on the evolution of human consciousness in 97, Conscious Evolution. Encourage everybody to get that. And she just passed a year and a half ago, but we were just working on our next work when she died at 89 on the next stage of what we call evolutionary entrepreneurship. The next stage of entrepreneurship on the planet is the combination of all the powers, all the awarenesses, all the insights, and an evolutionary perspective on what's needed to actually use the radical concentration of power that's going into the hands of a few people on the planet wisely. So Barbara Marx Hubbard, one of my key mentors, Hazel Henderson, the futurist economist who's still alive since the early 90s, one of my close mentors, one of Barbara's key friends, Ralph Metzner, who I studied with for almost 20 years, who was dean of California Institute of Integral Studies, but author of 17 books on a whole variety of areas of mysticism, shamanism, indigenous cultures of healing and mind and body and spirit expansion. So Ralph was one of my very key mentors. Obviously, I'm now working with Roshi Joan Halifax at the Upaya Zen Center. These are all, seminal, extraordinary people in my life, and there are others. I mean, I certainly have mentored a lot of people in my life in short, intense periods. My model has not been a lifetime relationship. It's been how can I help somebody quickly and not create disappointment. Like, that, I'm going to be there for all things at all times, but how can I help you right now with my insights, my love, my genius, whatever. I mean, there are certainly some people in my life who I'm mentoring, and it's a beautiful process. And I'm very fortunate to still be mentoring and learning right now from many people, particularly in the healing arts, because I do healing work in some areas of trauma, particularly childhood trauma with people. And how do I continue learning to be more effective in helping people through those types of very challenging emotions in life.
I'm sure you have so much wisdom to share, and anybody that was lucky enough, I think I'm going to take this hour as a full mentorship hour with Mark here.
Yeah, Mark,
so,
I was just
thank you.
Ask you how quiet does your mind get? Because I've just recently been picking up meditation, prayer, and practicing principles, and all the old timers always say how quiet their mind gets. And mine's not very quiet, Mark, but I think you have a little more experience than me. When does that kick in?
So the key thing you want to do with meditation is to shift your patterns. So we oftentimes have loops that go around in our mind. Oftentimes they're attached to stories that ingrain and help us relive our trauma. And our busy mind oftentimes keeps on recycling some of these stories, and oftentimes recycles punishing ourselves, hurting ourselves with shame, blame, anger. So I'd be very gentle with yourself. Having true lucid calmness, infinite presence. So that's really just being completely connected. So it's like literally it's a spirit-based eternal moment in a certain way when you do find the calmness, the stillness of all eternity, not being attached, not being directional, just being present for a moment, which might just be in your breath. Yet you don't need to achieve that to transform the patterns. Just continue doing small practices, whether that's even 3 or 4 breaths a day, to just shift some of the patterns and some of the stories, some of the the chatter. And that's great. If you can just accomplish that, it's amazing. And then if you are trying to practice meditation, I'll just say as a very simple foundationally, I would highly encourage people to be focused on their breath. And then if you have a thought that comes to mind that starts to get into your moment of trying to meditate, whatever meditate is, I would just name it thought and say thought. Whatever the thought is, just say, oh, that's a thought, and try and let it go. Don't say more than that. There's no judgment, good, bad. Why are you coming into my brain thought? There's none of that. Just, oh, thought. If you have a feeling like an itch or scratch or, upset or whatever, just say feeling, and then just thought, feeling, breath. Ultimately, it takes all the judgment out of the space, and you will settle more and more into your breath, and ultimately reset your patterns.
After that pandemic, I'm sure a lot of us need to reset our patterns, and we're starting to see the importance of all this mental health and mental wellness. And that's why I love the work that you guys do at LifeGuides, because I think it's so important right now. And like you said, it's going to be awesome to watch the ride of the organization as more companies refocus their efforts and energy back on the people. So I love that. What is a guy like you, when you're grown, like, what would you tell your younger self, Mark? What is something you wish that you knew when you were younger, after all this experience that you've had from all these different religions and everything else like that? What is something you wish you could tell your younger self?
Well, we can't rewrite history, as we know. So I try not to live in the past, although that, is easier said than done. There can be a few regrets along the road of life, but that's not what my life story is about, fortunately. A simple level, it would have been wonderful if at a younger age I understood how to love and how to receive love more effectively. If I understood the power of just simple kindness more effectively, if I knew how to slow things down a bit more, if I knew how to channel upset in a way that didn't act out on people, if you see the level of energy I have now, imagine the way I was bouncing off the balls at age 29.
Yeah, your poor mother. Yeah, your poor mother. Yeah, you were running circles around that lady. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Well, she could hold her own quite well.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can only see you, your sister, and your mother at this table, and the conversations that you guys must have. It must be just electric. I can only imagine.
Yeah, well, there's intelligence and then there's other dynamics, but yeah, I mean, the truth be known, my mother had a lot of anxiety and fear, and I inherited also the perfection gene from her. Mm-hmm. So, perfection, what perfection does is it actually takes energy from you. It actually doesn't create energy. And so it's very hard thing to learn. Some wonderful writings on this in Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, which I'm just rereading right now. That book in general is genius, but just the whole aspect of perfectionism. So that would be another thing that I would have learned to rewire in myself earlier. It's been a real gift because I have the ability to go into details with amazing clarity and still be visionary, which is, kind of magical. So that's differentiated me in the world. But at another level, the perfectionism has created less ability to relate to people at times, less kindness, and more judgment of my own ability and what I'm doing. So yeah, I would be rewiring a lot of life if I had the choice. I bet we all would if we
I think you made out just okay, though. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say you made out all right.
And I always use perfection as an excuse to not be good at things. I would not try anything unless I was perfect at it. So I really didn't grow too much for a while. And I was wanted to ask you, Mark, if you knew that you couldn't fail at anything, what would you do?
Well, what I'm doing now, LifeGuides, obviously I've chosen to do with my life. And, with Enterprises as our partner, we're going to reduce suffering and struggle for 1 billion people. But ultimately, the platform that we built of matching up people who've been through a specific life event or life experience already with people who are currently trying to navigate that life experience is foundational to human well-being in every country, every culture. And ultimately, in one form or another, what we're doing right now, technology will enable more effective ways to use the the genius, the life experience, the love, the empathy of humanity, and match it up to others to share it, to give it more value, to give it more meaning, to give it more impact. And also for the people who are giving the gift, while we pay our guides, giving the gift of sharing their, so to speak, their wealth, their life experience, wisdom, and empathy. It really serves and feeds both sides of the equation. So, I feel like the model we have is foundational, and it's a model that will be here 1,000 years from now. Certain other models with technology that serve other needs, like let's say a Match.com, will be here 1,000 years from now too, because they serve a foundational human need, and technology helps enable it.
Yeah. A guy like you with all these life experiences, and you seem to be quite the observer. It sounds like listening is something that you've learned as a key characteristic. What if you were to write a book, what would you title it and what would it be about?
Well, I am writing a book, and it's on the evolution of entrepreneurship. So it's really the next stage of evolution of entrepreneurship and what that means in the exponential technology era, as we're trying to also integrate our evolutionary perspective on where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. And as for the first time in history, if one believes in God or spirit, which I do, we're actually, as a human species, not only are we conscious and aware of the whole system, or at least the system of Earth, at least at the level of current levels of perception, we actually have the power not only to be self-conscious of all of that, self-aware, directional. We actually have the ability right now to change the direction and the outcome of evolution itself. We've seen that with the species degradation of over 1 million species that have been lost in planetary existence already. Well, we actually have the power now as a species to actually co-create with God in the outcome of evolution. And yeah, there's aspects of this that I think are very scary that I'm not endorsing here, certainly, like gene sequencing babies to come out certain ways, or fetuses. That's rather crazy science. But there's other aspects here of how we use things like artificial intelligence and communications, global sensors, and even things like space exploration to redefine the story and vision of what's possible for humanity. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, these entrepreneurs that are backing space exploration, it might look like ego and it might look like capitalism, which there's some of that there. Yet also at another level, a lot of these people are leaders in space exploration, are trying to create the possibility to redesign the future for humanity. If for example, we look at Earth 100 years from now as where we live a beautiful, healthy, sustainable life, and we do manufacturing and extraction of minerals and things like that, let's say on the moon, that makes Earth, sustainability wise, from an environmental perspective, there's no more of this carbon piece. The cars are electric and the system becomes electric, and have a lot of heavy outcomes of manufacturing machinery can actually be done in space. If you start creating colonies wherever, let's say that's moon ultimately, or look at where we could be 200-300 years from now in an exponential technology curve. It's not Star Wars here, but it's not far off. Yeah. And that could end up reducing conflict on the planet. That could completely shift the fighting of nation states in the way we do things. It's certainly at some point, with the abundance we can create here, we're going to end things like there are still, 3 to 500,000 people on the planet at a minimum that are slaves. There are, over 1 billion people that don't have potable water. This is crazy in this era. So, what we have the ability to co-create right now with God, with spirit, with just purpose, really purpose beyond self, because that's what we're wired for. We as a species are wired to be fulfilled only when we live in purpose beyond self. A self-centered, egotistical, control-focused humanity would have killed itself long ago. We have basic goodness in humanity, and this book, to come back to your question that I'm working on, is about what's possible in this era that we're already in, and moving toward at the speed of light.
Wow. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking that far ahead. You're already 300 years down the road. Oh my gosh. Wow, Mark, blew my mind multiple times throughout that process there. I am going to be rewatching this podcast. I don't know if the viewers will, but you've given us so much to think about. One of the things that I've always wanted to understand is, like, what is, and I think you alluded to it throughout some of the questions that we've already answered, but what gets Mark out of bed every single day to show up like you do? And how do you keep reinventing yourself?
Oh, I'm really into creativity, and co-creativity is even more fun when you co-create with another. So that's really cool. I'm really into winning, so there is a certain game aspect of life. By the way, it doesn't have to be a win-lose game. One can just win. This is not a zero-sum reality. We can win. You can win. We can all win. That's the nature of the abundance in the era that we have. Even though in hyper-local dynamics, there are win-lose outcomes clearly. And I'm driven by all of that. I'm driven by personal growth and self-expression, connection to spirit. I love learning. You might imagine that I like the genius of being. So it's not an ego statement. It's just it's interesting to have had spirit give me the mind and heart and the situation I'm in life for however long I happen to be here and healthy and productive. So, I'm not the type of person that's ever going to be retiring, and, hopefully I'm here in 30 years, and it just like, my key mentors all were going strong, and, like Barbara Mark Hubbard, at 89 plus, it's, this is.
I have no doubt in my mind, Mark, that you will be working and really changing, but also creating disciples of seeing the world the similar way as you, and sharing in that co-creating space. I think that's so important for businesses as they grow and look to adapt and develop. That a lot of the information is already within, but they just don't know how to pull it out with the culture and that type of engagement because of the hierarchical structure that we're accustomed to today. As we head into the last segment, Mark, it's a part of the podcast where we ask you some stereotypical interview questions. So interview questions like you might have had way back when in your first job, what was your first job? I have to ask.
Well, it depends on how you define job, but I would say that I founded my first business, which was a gardening business, and grew that into a small business in the valley we lived in Framingham, Massachusetts, outside Boston. We didn't have much land, but I, ended up making a nice business out of selling tomatoes and zucchinis to all the ladies around and the mothers around, and carrying around my cute basket and being a firehead red cute kid. Used to get super premium prices, and that was very interesting. That I actually was going to become a horticulturist originally. I wanted to create new plant species when I was 6 or 7. was where I was then. That led to me being in the landscaping business, led to me uh, doing other things around that, but I decided ultimately that wasn't quite it. And then I turned some of my other hobbies into other businesses as a child that were very interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's a complicated, bumpy road. I mean, it sounds kind of interesting and fun, but then I got so captivated by uh, business entrepreneurship that I went from being in the top 5 or 10% of my high school class and playing 2 varsity sports and being president of 2 clubs to being a high school dropout so I could go run one of my businesses. So and I had a lot of other complexity in that part of my life, and a lot of ups and downs, a lot of depression and genius too. So it's not all been a simple ride, but yeah, you learn your lessons along the way, and you got to sequence things right. Probably would have been smarter if I graduated high school first and then built a lot of businesses.
So you do have to go to school, but wow, okay. I mean, that was just amazing in and of itself right there. So you've just always been a social entrepreneur. So you probably never had to have the answers to these questions, to these interview questions. But Tyler, what is your first interview question for Mark?
Mark, now that we had you on for a little bit, I got to know, what is your deepest fear and why?
Deepest fear? Well, that would depend on which level of existence. There are dynamics of dying and unconscious death. That sounds unpleasant to me. But I've done a lot of practices around death and dying and what that means, and also being born. So I guess I'm more prepared than most people. I definitely have fear of failure. So when you have something as special and magical as LifeGuides, where you can do such goodness on the planet, clearly, that's like having a young child. My 3-year-old is LifeGuides, so it would be just like a parent losing a child. Imagine that fear. So so that's how I feel about the enterprise that we're building. Remember, my mother was very anxious, I said earlier, so I have lots of fears about many things. It's just a matter of what you do with it. And it's like Andy Grove, who was CEO of Intel for over 20 years, said that his best friend and management device was constantly being paranoid. Well, I'm not constantly paranoid, but still, fear can be a good voice to listen to and understand life better.
Wow. All right. So my interview question for you is, if you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
Well, I would generally want to be one that was as sentient as possible. So sentient as an aware, conscious. That seems like that would be more fun than being completely unconscious, if that exists. I don't really know what their experience is like. So that would probably be, something like an ape or a chimpanzee, in that kind of realm. More conscious, more aware, more ability to explore. One of the greatest innovations was having a thumb. I think having a thumb sounds like a good idea if I'm going to be an animal.
Yeah, especially if I'm scavenging for food. I definitely like having a thumb in there. That's a hidden gem. So Mark, I just want to obviously say thank you so much for really stopping by and allowing us the opportunity to interview yourself. I know I learned a ton from you. These types of conversations excite me. You're almost creating an army with yourself on a new way of leadership, a new way of business that so many people, I hope, are listening and can learn from. Not only your background and your humble beginnings, but also to how that has factored into where you are today and what you're doing, and really finding, I think, your purpose, like you mentioned, and sharing that little bit of genius with us today. So Mark, I know I'm so grateful for taking the time out with us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much again for your time, and looking forward to next week. Stop back next week.
Thank you, Mark.